All right, hi everyone. Sorry, I'm 5 minutes late. Um, so as you know, this meeting is recorded and will be uploaded to YouTube. We can open the agenda, but one item I wanted to go through is the list of features we're planning for 121. We have another agenda item here, which is from Abdul, discuss feasible solutions to fall back on if metrics are not available. There are plugins that depend real-time metrics. Do we, okay, let's go through this one first, and then go to the feature tracker or release tracker spreadsheet. Abdul?
Yeah, good morning all. So a couple of months back, we discussed about real load aware scheduling plugins, and we have contributed KP for that. I have certain things to discuss and seek advice or suggestions for a specific problem. So the problem statement is this: so the plugin that we have depends on a metrics provider to get the usage metrics of a cluster. So if this metrics server or provider is not available, like let's say it crashes or fails for a long time, what solutions or what is something feasible that we could do so that we can still achieve the goal of the plugin, which is to do bin packing. So per the initial design, I had something in mind to fall back to allocation-based scheduling instead of using metrics. But I want to know if something else is possible. For example, changing the scheduler profile of pods dynamically or something of that sort. Any solution which would be acceptable to upstream.
So if I understand correctly, so you are trying to see if there are some dynamic kind of functionality in framework, so that in some cases that your plugin's dependency is not present due to some whatever reason, you want to sort of disable that plugin or switch to another plugin. So that is your intention, right?
Yeah, either switch to another plugin or maintain some failure state within the same plugin and fall back to some other, solution which doesn't depend on metrics. Anything of that sort, which would be like a good solution and acceptable.
I don't think if you specify a specific profile, you can dynamic change just the plugin within your profile. That is not supported. But you can just ignore that plugin if your plugin dependency is not present. That is possible. So just ignore that. Is that doable for you?
Like more concretely, like one thing you can do, plugins have access to shared state called cycle state. One thing you could do, for example, in a pre-filter, you can check if like which set of two plugins you want to have run in that cycle. And you can create a state that says, okay, plugin 1 or plugin 2. Now, when filter runs, or even pre-filter for these two plugins, like that filter that pre-filter that checks, I mean, like dynamically which plugin should run the very first one. So it sets that flag in cycle state, and then those two plugins, again, they play nicely together. They check, okay, I should run or the other one should run. And like this is the one way that I can think of where you can do this dynamically. So you would have all the plugins registered. You have to do that because it's static file. Now, during runtime, you decide which ones are going to run, and you put that decision in the cycle state. Is that what you're trying to do?
Yeah, even that is fine. So a follow-up question on that. So the plugin that I have that we have tries to do bin packing based on usage. So something I would want to fall back would be, say, logic similar to the native plugin, which is most allocated resources. So would it be fine to build something duplicate, or is it okay if the plugin that I have depends on most allocated resources plugin to be able to do this? Does that question make sense?
I'm not sure I understand. Like, you want to develop another plugin that does something similar, but you want to fall back to the old one in some
Yeah.
cases?
What I'm trying to say is the solution you mentioned to switch between two different plugins. So the plugin that we're contributing is already one of them, and the fallback would be the native plugin, which is
Okay.
So is it okay for the within the profile to depend on calling a score of a different plugin? Is what I'm asking from the implementation or design perspective.
Right. I mean, you would have to, yeah, you would have to modify the. I'm wondering if we should have some sort of like a generic way of saying dynamically whether a plugin should run or not.
Yeah.
And then you can configure that on the fly.
Right.
So I guess that's a possibility.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it would need like a cabinet design, and so that we can do this like efficiently.
Does the cycle state have access to what is registered in the profile? And you could just similarly like check off of that and enable or disable something in your filter plugin, like in pre-filter, check that.
I mean, we could technically, when we create the cycle, we create the cycle state on each scheduling cycle. So we could change, like we could have the new function, for example, take on a parameter like with this key value, and it would be a known key value, which is the set of plugins that will run in this cycle. And the caller or whoever is creating the cycle state would know. Would need to basically populate this. And I'm guessing we do have that information at that time. But we would need like probably some refactoring, make sure that this whole thing works nicely with nice dependencies.
Can I make some comments? And
yeah, sure.
So this is Yuan from Apple. Sorry, I was late. So I just heard we're talking about some probably dynamic and the config of the plugin, other thing. So I think we have a requirement, probably similar one, and I chat with Wei and probably offline, and we'll go. So far the plugin and the scheduling framework supports, right? So we create multiple profiles with the customer plugins, but it's statically and configured. So, but we have use cases when we create the custom scheduling, yeah, sometimes maybe depending on the cluster runtime information that we want to selectively or dynamically configure the plugins. So this is something I think in long run probably useful. So one example and we have is we want to have some advanced scheduling and do some optimization set if we have a group of homogeneous and ports, right? And when we're scoring some of them and maybe we can reuse the previous results and to assign the nodes to similar or identical ports. But whether or not that's is very useful feature. But by that way, and sometimes maybe we want to skip and some of the plugin, but the net has to be decided and determined at runtime. So overall, and I just thinking, yeah, that's probably something, yeah, this group community can think about it, whether or not that is an important thing and can dynamically and configure the plugins. But I understand, I think is the reliability, simplicity, and the right trade-off and the new features, and we have to be very careful. I just want to, yeah, chip in, and we do see some requirement and needs, yeah, for the dynamically, yeah, configure plugins at runtime.
Right, and so there are two levels to it. One is at some point during the cluster lifecycle, you want to dynamically change the set of plugins. So it's really infrequent. And there is another where you say, no, I want to change the behavior. I might want to change the behavior between scheduling attempts. So those are two completely different requirements. The first one usually is basically we have a config map, and then we watch for the config map, and then on each change on the config map, we reload the configuration, we recreate all the profiles, etc. So that's some form of dynamism, but it's not fine-grained. It's it's coarse-grained. And then the other one is like really dynamic per scheduling attempt. I guess Abdul was talking mostly about the latter, and Yuan, like at the beginning when you were started to talk about this, I thought you were talking about the former, which is like.
Yeah, so I think my requirement would be met even with the first thing that you mentioned, the former, because the fallback that we have won't be, you know, very frequent. It would be only in the case of the server not being available for a very long time, or, you know, something very drastic. So the plugin that we have is okay, you know, to, you know, let's say avoid a node which doesn't have metrics available and those things. But what I would be looking for is something that will change, as you described in the first case, for a longer period of time. So I'm fine with the first requirement too.
Right. The problem with the config map approach is that you want some sort of external process to update the config map. And so you need an external controller that decides, oh, these components are available or not available. And based on that, I'm going to update the config map with how the scheduler should be running. The approach where we do everything inside the scheduler and dynamically change things like on each scheduling, potentially on each scheduling attempt, is that you need the scheduler itself to be aware, like you have a pre-filter, as I mentioned, to probe the external components and say, okay, those are not available, and so I have to update like for this specific scheduling cycle, those are the set of plugins that should run. And I do see a use case for both. I'm just saying that those are two different ones. I wasn't sure which one Yuan was referring to.
Yeah, Abdullah, yeah, that very good points. And I honestly, and I didn't think too much about this too. So maybe even some of my comments, I think were off topic for this particularly and the case and we are talking about today. So generally, and I just thinking and high level the goal, right? And we have one goal is make the scheduler and or the scheduler behavior can more dynamic and adaptive. But I would consider then there are two probably and the methods approach like you described. And yeah, first is the profile, the plugin, and the configure itself, or another one is just the runtime behavior. Yeah, I think that's a good point. I haven't thought carefully about that. I think for some use cases, probably in the second one is good enough, and just we can customize some behavior instead of completely reconfiguring and the plugin. And but I think. We need to think more about it.
Okay. I suggest, just so that we have time for the rest of the features, Abdul or Yuan, you create an issue, describe your use case, and then we can discuss like what granularity of configurability we should provide.
Cool.
And how. I really think it's useful. Like I imagine that there will be use cases for it. But yeah, we want to have a longer discussion on what those use cases are look like, so that we brainstorm on like where those knobs should exist at what level.
Yeah, completely agree.
Yeah, sure, sounds good. Thank you.
Anyone have any comments about the topic, or should we move to the spreadsheet? Okay, so on the spreadsheet, I've listed a few issues that we might want to tackle for 121, and I encourage you, please, like add comments on this spreadsheet. Let me ping it on the chat. If you have any other things, or just basically open an issue, and then we can add it to this tracker sheet. And the purpose of this sheet is basically for us as a checkpoint of how much progress we've made during the lifetime of the release in every SIG meeting.
Could you add that? Oh, there it is. Thank you.
Sorry? Yeah. So the first one.
I was just going to. Yeah. Never mind.
Pod topology spread constraints should be taken into account. So here, like this is the ideal solution is to get basically scale, like pod topology spread semantics on scale down. There are use cases being described that needs this more than affinity and anti-affinity, and I don't think that descheduler actually is a good use case for it. Now, it might turn out that using, like really implementing this in the replica set controller might be too expensive, and so simply doing things randomly might just work as good. But I just throw the idea there, like to take pod topology spread into account, just to see what people think about it. So Mike will take onto that one, whether this exact one or doing random scale down. And again, this is in the context of pod topology spread. So that's why we're tracking it here in SIG scheduling. Likely most of the work will be in SIG. So. The second one is refactoring, dependency of the framework. I'm guessing, Mike, you continue to do this with Jan? Yeah,
this is going much better now, especially for 120 that we have the new helper repo. So that should pick up a lot of speed this release.
The third one is adding namespace selective to pod affinity spec. So this is mostly, right now you can list a list of like namespaces explicitly, but that doesn't allow you, for example, to say I want this set of namespaces, like some sort of a regular expression kind of thing, or even something simpler. And this is useful for cases where, for example, you want to do one-to-one pod to node assignment across namespaces. Right now it's like, and you don't know what those namespaces are. Like, for example, you're a service provider, you create namespaces for each user you have, but you need one-to-one placement across all the users that they share this set of nodes. And so you need to do required pod anti-affinity between pods across all namespaces, or a set of namespaces. So you can, and so this basically gives you the flexibility to do that. There has been some precedence here as well for using namespace selector. The main pushback we got initially from Jordan is performance, but I think we've solved like most performance issues related to affinity, whether it's required or preferred. Any questions or feedback on this one? Does this sound important?
My question is there any pattern or existing use case that exercising the namespace selector across all the Kubernetes features?
Is there a use case?
No, I mean just similar patterns that are using namespace selector. What kind of features does?
I can share a couple on the issue that I created.
Okay.
I think one that is in the API server is they're trying to do something similar. Not sure for which exact feature.
Yeah, the other point is that I think in the beginning stage of Kubernetes, the namespace is by default indexed. But instead, if we switch to namespace selector, that means only when the namespace selector is indexed, we can get similar performance. Otherwise, maybe it has some performance concern. Just
you mean the namespace will add overhead?
Sorry?
You mean the namespace?
Yeah, sort of, yeah. Because in the API server side, the namespace is by default indexed, but not the namespace selector.
Okay.
We may check with the API folks. If they are okay with the overhead, that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, we'll have to go through API review anyways.
Yeah, sure.
And then we have efficiently queuing. So I hope that we seriously consider this cycle. It's been moving since like 1.19, I guess, or 18. So Wei is interested in this one as well, in the context of the external.
Yeah, both the upstream and the downstream, which is the scheduled plugin repos. Some users raise the similar requirements and concerns. For example, if you have a group of paths and the one we have an unscheduled path belong to one path group, we definitely want, or for example, if you have one path belonging to a one path group and that path is schedulable, for sure you maybe want some ability in the scheduling framework to move all your sibling paths which belongs to the same path group to be moved back to the active queue efficiently, instead of randomly depends on the underlying implicit semantics to move them back randomly, sort of like that. So this is maybe pretty useful for this kind of scenario. And I will consolidate all the requirements and the proposed design.
Then deprecating custom plugins. This depends on the progress we're going to make with V1 beta 2. So I guess that's under getting component config to V1 beta 2. Integration test benchmark of Python schedule pods. So I'm not sure if this one we will continue to do this, but we might be able to. So I guess this is for Adi.
Actually, Jun said he'd like to work on the other part of the preemption optimization, just like yeah. No, not Jan. Hex108 is their username on GitHub.
Okay.
I'm not sure exactly who needs to be the owner for this anymore, but yeah.
Okay, we'll follow up. The other ones are speculative, really. The second, like the other two, unless we have strong demand for them, they will probably need to start with a KEP. So refactoring, assume, forget, into reserve, unreserved plugin. Again, this depends on the kind of plugins we've been seeing in the external repo, and if there has been any request to actually get those out and refactored. And the other one is extension points for queuing, dequeuing, and updating pods as well. So that, again, depends on the external requirements we get from the external repo of plugins, if there's been a need to customize those.
I think the 93591 can be merged with the efficient requeue of paths.
I don't know if we want to merge it. Like I think they're different. So the 9591 is talking about whether to have extension points in the framework for queuing, dequeuing pods. I don't know if it is necessary to have efficient requeuing of pods.
Okay, I'll consider them and see what we can do. Yeah.
Yeah. And then we have the work on preferred nominated node. So this is ongoing. I think we're gonna get. We have a KIP, and the implementation is probably. Yeah, we have a PR for the implementation. And that's pretty much it. I don't know if the descheduler folks would like to add their stuff here. But Mike, if you would like to, please let me know.
Yeah, that pod topology one was finished in 120, so I don't know if this is for 121. We could probably remove that from here, and we'll put together what features we're working on. Sean, I don't know if you had any off the top of your head.
No, I haven't thought about it yet.
Yeah, we just finished 20, so we'll see what slipped through.
Abdullah, just two clarification questions. So this feature we're talking about, I saw the titles here. It's actually for 121, right? That's the plan. So I saw it's Kubernetes 120. 120 is already released, right?
Sorry, which one?
I mean the features, and we are talking about. It's targeted for 121, right? Release.
Yeah, there's a typo.
Yeah, probably it's typo.
The tab.
Yeah, I just want to.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but the other features in the sheet of 120, and so I'm looking at the release note. So all these features already released, right? The 120, I mean. Our plan, or is any? Yeah, because I also see the descheduler and something there as well, and just curious.
Yeah, I mean, there are some that have moved from 120 to 2021, as you can see, the efficient requeuing, the last two.
Okay.
Benchmark, this one is done, for example, refactoring.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so anything is done should be already included in the release note, right?
Yeah. I mean, in 1.19, you can see in the tab we did our job, like in cleaning up and tracking through the ones that we actually did. I'll do that for this one now. All right. Any final thoughts? All right. Have a good break, everyone. So next meeting is going to be in the new year.
Have a good Christmas holiday.
Thank you. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays. Happy New Year.
Thanks, everybody.